Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and for today's video, we're going to take a look at some of the underrepresented decks in the Miami Treasure Cup's top 16 list. So we're going to start off by looking over Kaban's Law list, moving to Kevin's Kaido, and finishing it off with Manuel's Doflamingo deck. Now, there were only 2 Laws in top 16. I believe there were also 2 Kaidos and 1 Doflamingo, but these were definitely very, very powerful decks. There was a sea of green and red in Miami, but these decks still stuck it out and were able to make it all the way to the top 16. Saying that Law is one of the more underrepresented decks is very surprising to me. It was something that I wasn't expecting because I thought Law being, red, green, it fits in that little mix of very powerful decks. When you combine those decks together, you're left with an even more powerful deck, I would think. But the 4 life and high skill ceiling the deck has maybe is where it kind of falters and doesn't really make it an easy deck to pilot for 9 total rounds. So congratulations to Kaban, and let's take a quick look at his deck. So on a first glance, like most Law decks, there are a lot of cards that are just natural 4-ofs. There's nothing we can do here but expect Otama, Chopper, Nami, Bonnie, like all of these cards to be 4-ofs. If you look at the typing for this deck, I know I'm covering currently, but there are 26 Supernovas and 24 Straw Hats and then 9 Wano Country cards. Because we have such a low Wano count, there is no need for the Momonosuke, and it's a little bit out of favor to do the triple search that I was trying to employ earlier and just focus on Supernova and Straw Hat so that you very rarely whiff. Completely understandable, and I can totally see that happening. With that being said, there's a lot of really interesting cards that Kaban was able to tech into his list, and I'm going to go over them real quick. So everything here, starting off with the 1-drops, if we look at the curve, there are 24 1-drops in this deck, which is very high. But you do want to play a lot of 1-drops because that lets you get to your classic board state of 5 characters. Once you get to 5 characters, you can start using your Law ability, shambling, going into the character Law, and then you're off to the races, right? That's what the deck wants to do. And then we have Eustace Captain Kidd as a contingency plan versus aggro decks, versus purple, versus decks that we need to stall a couple turns, and placing a Monkey D. Luffy from the starter deck behind the Eustace Captain Kidd is nothing short of terrifying. So the first interesting card, let's put it that way, that I do see on this list is this Gordon. This is the Gordon from the film deck, and if you don't know what this does, this says active main. You may bottom deck this card to give 1 character on your opponent's side of the board minus 3,000 power during this turn. And that is a very fantastic effect because it combos so well with the Nico Robin, right? So if you minus 3,000 a character, you have Nico on board, that goes ahead and stretches Nico's minus 3k knockout effect all the way up to 6,000 power threshold, which is nothing to scoff at. That is a Trafalgar Law, that is a Basil Hawkins, that is a bunch of very powerful creatures. It is basically a pistol on wheels. At the same time, you get some aggression with it. If you so choose to put some Dawn on this Gordon by using Brooks' effect, swing for 5, kill or knock out a character, you're in a really, really good spot. Not only that, this is a 1-drop, so it fits that nice 24 character curve. And if you're able to combo that even further with an Otama, that just knocks out even a Eustace Captain Kidd. So it's really, really interesting. I don't really see this Gordon a lot. It is a film card, so it's not really easily seen. What is nice about it is that it is a red weenie, because the red weenies let you flip into your Law very, very easily. So there's also that really nice little intricacy about it as well. But most of the time, this character is just applying pressure into Bonnies, Momonosuke's, things along those lines, while also bottom decking and letting Nico Robin do some cleanup. Seems like a very, very strong card in the mirror match, and honestly, versus aggressive decks, I like it as a cool little tech choice. Something to be said here, there are only 3 Nekomamushis and 2 Izos. Usually I do see people go a little bit higher on these counts, usually 4 Nekos and 3 Izos, but he chose to drop those down a little bit, I think, to play this killer, to find space for it. It's just a very tight deck in general, and because of that, I think that's where he went with these low numbers, getting those 2 down, 2 lowered. He also was playing 2 Brook. Now, Brook is a fantastic card in this deck because it is necessarily free. It plays itself and uses its Dawn correctly, and it allows you to get to that 5 character threshold, but there doesn't seem to be many 2Ks in this deck. Once you look at his list, if you're able to have this information prior to the tournament, you are just swinging at this guy for 5 all day. In terms of 2K counter power, I believe, I'm trying to go down and see if it gives it to me quickly, but we have 4 Otamas, 2 Brooks, and 2 Ezos. We have 8 2Ks, and that's it. Very, very aggressive. But he does supplement this 8 2K line by playing 3 Radical Beams. This is a law deck, so getting down to the 2 threshold on life is very, very easy. And once you get there, we have these 1 cost 4K counter cards that are pseudo blast breaths without the Dawn minus effect, which are very, very powerful. I also like the fact that he's playing 3 pistol. 3 pistol seems like the right amount for this deck. 2 is not enough, and 3 seems like the Goldilocks zone. 4 is too much, 2 is not enough, so we're sitting nice and pretty with 3, since it's dual searchable by Nami and Bonnie, and allows you to get that Otama Jet pistol interaction a lot more often. He does play Zoro for Robin and 2 Killer, right? So you see a 2-2 split of Killer and Zoro, 3 costs that do different things, but necessarily for the aggression, for the control, and then we have maximizing on the Nico Robin for the mid game to beat out these tempo decks, the Mirror, and these aggro red decks, right? And then switching into our later game plan of Luffy and Kid, right? Here we have the Supernovas showing off that the worst generation just simply is the best, huh? So very, very cool deck. Congratulations to Kaban for doing so well and piling this deck all the way up to 2nd place in the Miami Treasure Cup. Moving forward, we have Kevin Lay's Kaido deck, which is very different than the Kaido decks that I've been showcasing on my channel. To start off, when you look at the 2Ks in this deck, we have 4 of the Sasakis, we have 3 of the ulti, 4 of the Drakes, and that's about it. So we're not playing the maximum amount. We're -1 because of this ulti, and he chose to play ulti as opposed to the old man. And that is honestly just a player preference type of situation, right? The old man, I believe, still offers you a little bit more than ulti ever does, but he decided to go for ulti just because of the 2K power or the 2K counter threshold that it has. Another interesting aspect of this deck, we have 2 Chungus and 1 of the 7-drop King as our 7-drops. I thought this 7-drop King, honestly, I think this 7-drop King is very, very powerful, as the matchups that you start to struggle on, red, law, decks along those nature, this King really, really puts in work. But honestly, you do have 3 of this Kaido, and if you're playing the 9-drop Kaido as well, and the 6-drop King, you might honestly just get there. What I do think is a little bizarre is that we're only playing 3 Blast Breath, one of the best, if not the best event card in this game in terms of counter power. At 3 seems a little interesting to me, but there's just a couple interesting things in this deck. Most of it is pretty standard. I do like this Jack as a 4 of. I'm not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with, but I do like the fact that it is a 1K counter power card, right? Most of the time in Kaido, the 1K counters end up being the blockers in Queen, Black Maria, and Higurashi. So these cards end up getting, removed for a 5K swing, but Jack doesn't feel too bad to ditch in combination with Big Chungus as well as Babanuki. Obviously 4 stages and 4 of the starter deck King, which I wasn't even playing a single one of, is definitely a different take than I would do on purple, but certainly piloted all the way up to top 16. I think this deck finished in top 8, and it finished its run versus Eustace Captain Kid. But definitely a very solid deck. There's a couple things that I would reckon I would change, so might as well do them while we're here, right? I first of all take this Jack down to 2, and I would play 1 more of the 2Ks, whether it be ulti, whether it be old man, it doesn't really matter. I am starting to see how this King becomes a little bit more playable, so I do like it. Let's go ahead and do this, and then I would like to up this, and then find space for 2 Brachio Bombers. And now all of a sudden, this is a little bit more akin to what I would rather run in a purple deck, but honestly, the numbers speak for themselves, and as long as you're confident in your deck, you can pilot anything really to the top. And Kevin Lay really showed that he was very confident in his deck, playing against Luffy in top 16 and doing really, really well. So congratulations to him in making it all the way to top 8. And then we have Don Quixote Doflamingo. So Don Quixote Doflamingo is another under the radar deck. It is basically bottlenecked by the Sea of Green. When you have to play a bunch of green players, and especially the seasoned green players that we have in Miami, this deck is going to struggle, right? And depending on how your list is built, you'll have a harder or easier time Funnily enough, I did use his Captain Kid as a deck to play on the side when I wasn't commentating to have fun versus you know, players or people that were interested in playing some games or even playing in the side events. And I did play versus a Don Quixote Doflamingo, and the only loss I have had all weekend in a side event was when I was playing Kid and he was playing Doflamingo. My opponent was playing 4 Mihawks though, and he played legitimately Mihawk, 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 and it was very, very difficult to get through that, right? So once he played the third one, I was like, you know what? The third one is strong, but certainly there won't be any more. And yeah. But it was a very, very close game. Honestly, I think I lost because he had 1 bonus blocker, but certainly a very, very good game. There's also another couple interesting things that Manuel is doing here. One of them being the addition of the Sentomaru engine. This guy might watch the channel. So if you do watch the channel and you were picking up the Sentomaru idea from us, that's really, really cool. Because I do think Sentomaru does have a place in this deck. The Sentomaru Pacifista engine is very, very powerful. The fact that he also supplemented that engine further by playing Bartholomew Kuma is really, really strong, right? So you have this Teach, you have this Kuma, these Hancocks, and this whole engine here, and it just seems really, really solid. The consistency of summoning Pacifistas either from your blocker Kuma or your Sentomaru character ability seems like it'll happen more often than not, and because of that, we have a 3-2 split of blocker and attacker Pacifista, which I really, really do like. These cards are super duper strong. Another cool thing about the Sentomaru engine that I've mentioned in the past is that Perona kind of pseudo searches for it, right? Because she'll stack your deck. You'll put the draw to the top, and then the one you want to play on the other card, right? So Sentomaru can come down on 3, can come down on 6. It is an odd and an even card, so it definitely has a really good amount of space in the deck, as well as you can bottom deck what you don't want using its ability, and then Peronaing after or Don Quixote after to fix the top of the deck once again. But definitely really interesting. 3 law, interesting, and only 2 love beams. So I like this deck. I like where he's going. Let the man cook. But here we go. Initially, so one thing that I actually, and I'm not gonna lie, I really liked that my Doflamingo opponent was doing was playing 4 Mihawks. I think that guy convinced me heavily into playing them, but the only way that I can see myself, and I'm just not a fan of the Virgo, is going like this, and then potentially like that, and I still want to get into this amount and this amount. Not a fan of this card, and I believe we can drop a little bit of, I don't want to drop Alvita too much. I guess that is absolutely fine. So I think this is something more akin to what I'd be wanting to play, maybe even fitting a overheat into this deck. But the Doflamingo deck always ends up being very, very similar, right? It's a very tight deck because the amount of really good 7 Warlords of the Sea that we have at this time is very, very limited until we're able to play the promotional Jinbei, which will make a world of a difference to this deck. I think the promotional Jinbei will make me want to remove the Sentomaru engine and just focus on the Kuma and this Pacifista, playing more of the Warlords just to have more consistency with that, and then playing more events and things along those lines to defend my board. So with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope the rundown and my thoughts on these decks help you and help you in your future games. There are still 2 more Treasure Cups. We have Las Vegas coming up on the following week, and then Texas on the week after that. So certainly much more One Piece to be done this month. If you like this sort of video, leave a like down below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything that I can improve in terms of these decks, or we can improve on together, please leave a comment. Let me know how you're doing with your decks, and I love talking about deck theory in the comments section below, and you know we interact with that very, very heavily. And as always, guys, if you haven't joined the Pirate Crew and you're thinking of joining, consider hitting that subscribe button, and I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.